Welcome to Simplify to Scale, a show dedicated to helping you scale a high impact and high profit business that you love without all of the complexity and chaos that can keep you trapped in the day-to-day. I'm your host, Krista Grasso, and with decades of scaling experience, I know what actually works and what's just hype. So if you are done with all of the one-size-fits-all scaling advice and all of the overnight success promises, and instead you want proven practical strategies that will help you simplify operations, elevate your leadership, amplify profits, and scale sustainably, let's dive in and get started. Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Simplify to Scale show. Today, we're going to be talking about what I feel is one of the most impactful freedoms of all, which is the freedom of choice. And specifically, there's so much I have to say on this topic, and I'll probably do several episodes on it. But for today specifically, what I wanted to share with you is a story from many years ago, probably about 20 plus years ago now, that really shifted the way that I saw my business and started to have me first really thinking about the freedom of choice. I think so often we first start thinking about financial freedom, right? I need to make more money. I need to make more money. And then we get to the point that the business is making good money, but what we don't have is freedom of time. And we're working so much and there's so much dependent on us and everything is coming back to us that we're focused on freedom of time. And so it starts in our earlier stages of business of freedom of money, then it moves to freedom of time. And you can certainly kind of ping pong back between the two of those as things change. But where I think things start to get so interesting and where I think things start to change in so many ways is when your focus starts to shift to freedom of choice. You're not so deeply entrenched in must make more money or must get back more time that all of a sudden you start to broaden your horizons of what's possible and what freedom ultimately means to you. And so I want to share with you a story of someone who went on to become a business mentor of mine and who's been a very good friend of mine for a long time. But I was in a mastermind group. Oh gosh, I don't even know when this was now, like early 2000s. It was a long time ago, maybe mid 2000s. And this person was in the group with me. And we had, multiple calls per week. And it was your typical group program back in the day. Like this was like early days before there were a lot of things like this. And part of what we did was we got together a couple times a year in person. And so we were sitting at a table and we were masterminding and everyone got to ask their question. And I still remember the question that she ended up asking. And she said, yeah, I'm trying to figure out what I want to do. Now, this was in October. She said, I know that I could take the next 2 months off and spend time with my daughter. I think our daughter was about 7 then. Or I could work through the next 2 months and make an extra $250,000. I already hit my revenue target for the year. So I'm trying to figure out, do I want to work the next couple months and bring in an extra 250K? Or do I want to take it easy and spend time with my daughter for the holidays? And I just remember that question at the time being so almost outrageous to me in the sense where I was like, what? Like, how do you know that over the next 2 months, you're going to make $250,000 if you work? My business was successful. I was well into six figures at that point and everything. But the idea of having that much predictability that I could know with certainty that if I worked for 2 months, I'd make $250,000. And that was probably around what I was making total in my business, maybe even a little more. So it was kind of just like, what? When she said that. And I was like, oh my God, I want that kind of predictability in my business. But then the other thing I was thinking is like, I am working really hard right here trying to grow my business, trying to get my business to seven figures and trying all the different things and trying to learn all the things and implement all the things, right? And here she was kind of laid back and kind of chill about her decision, like, which one should I do? And the fact that an extra $250,000 for her was a nice to have. Whereas I was in the point where I felt like every single dollar that came into my business was critical. Like I needed it to pay my team. I needed it to pay myself. I needed it to reinvest back into the growth of the business. I think I was even carrying debt in the business at that point. And so just the fact that she knew for sure that over 2 months she would bring in $250,000, she had that level of confidence and predictability. She could choose to make it or not because it was kind of a nice to have for her. And then ultimately, the fact that she had the freedom of choice to really pick between the two, that neither was a make or break decision. It was a choice. It wasn't that she didn't feel she had a choice. It was kind of, what do I want to do? What do I not want to do? And I will say that simple question that she asked was such a perception shift and eye opening conversation for me at the time that it had a really big impact on how I thought about my business. And it had a big impact on how serious I got about putting the right structures in place and the right systems in place and the right team in place and all of the things in place so that I could have that level of consistency, that level of predictability, that level of optionality and choice. And so it was such an impactful conversation for me. And the thing that I find to be so ironic in all of it was, we stayed in touch over the years and everything, but I think it had been probably about 10 or 15 years between that event and when I saw her actually in person again. And I was at a podcast fest and she was there. She was one of the speakers. And so we were sitting down and grabbing lunch and chatting. And I shared this with her. And this conversation had been so impactful for me and framed so much of how I had kind of thought about my business after that. And she didn't even remember the conversation. So, like, she's like, oh, did I ask that? Yeah, okay. Sounds like something I might ask. And it was like so insignificant to her. She honestly didn't even remember asking it. And that was yet another just reinforcement. I just remember laughing at that lunch and saying, this was why it stood out so much to me because I was so far from those things being true with consistency and predictability and choice. It just being like, do I want to make an extra 250K or not? Meh, would be nice. Don't actually need it. And so if you have ever been there or had a story like that, I think you'll know exactly what I mean. Like you eventually hit this point in your business where that becomes true. But before you hit that point in your business, or if your business takes a turn and you are no longer in that place, it feels just so foreign to be able to make those kinds of decisions or have that much clarity. And so I made it my mission to get my business to the point that those things were true for me. And I realized over time that it was that freedom of choice that I wanted. I never wanted to feel like I had to make decisions or I had to do things that I did not want to do because of constraints that felt like things I had to make compromise choices on. So, for example, the times in business where finances are so tight, you feel like I've got to say yes to this and take on this extra work, even though I know I'm already pushing myself way too much, right? And you take it on because you needed the money coming into the business. You didn't want to have to let someone go, or you didn't want to have to make a decision, or you had something you needed to pay off, or you wanted to pay yourself that month. Like for whatever reason, you say no and you end up overcommitting yourself. And then you end up more exhausted and feeling like you need more of a break, but feeling like you can't take one. And it just kind of feeds itself over time. Or the freedom of choice in being able to surround yourself with the right people, right? You have the type of resources that you could choose the people you really want to work with instead of the people that you feel like you can only barely afford. Or the freedom of choice to work with the mentors and do the experiences that you really want to, but you wouldn't really allow yourself to do until you were at a certain place. Or the freedom of choice in investing in the time to have a really strong routine and habits that support you, like eating really healthy or moving more or structuring your week and your days and your schedule to really support how and when you work at your best instead of having to just kind of plow through it all because you just got to get it all done, right? And so there's so many different ways that freedom of choice shows up. But I think there's who we spend our time with, there's how we spend our time, there's what we invest in from a time, a money, and an energy perspective. There's how we're able to pay ourselves, there's how we're able to pay our team, there's how we're able to invest in ourselves. as the leader of our business and invest in ourselves personally so we're showing up at our best and invest back into our business so it can keep growing and it can scale in the way and at the level that we want to. And so freedom of choice to me is just the ultimate freedom to work towards. And so I'm in the middle of some big changes in my business. I know I've been sharing some of this, not just business, just like in life in general. And I've gone into this in quite a few episodes. And as I'm in this place of building something new, it's not really new, it's bringing back to life my jewelry brand, but it's a much bigger experience. It's an entire universe I'm creating. I will share more about that soon, and I'm really excited to. But if you think about it, I'm segmenting and compartmentalizing what I'm doing, where I'm looking at that as something brand new that I'm building up from zero. Even though I have an existing business, I have existing clients, I have an existing team, even though I have some of those things in place, I'm looking at this almost like it's something new, like it's a brand new brand and business and everything that I'm building up. And what I'm doing different about it this time than when I launched the jewelry business the first time back in 2004, right? Then I did not know then what I know now. The conversation with this founder that I shared with you actually probably happened a few years after I launched that brand. But that being said, now I'm in a different place, right? This is going to be my ninth business that I've launched. I've been doing this a long time. I have the wisdom gained from a whole lot of poor choices and a whole lot of very expensive mistakes, both like mentally and physically and financially and emotionally and energetically and all of those things, right? And so I have the benefit of all those lessons learned as I go into this. And what I've decided from day one is I'm building that business with freedom of choice in mind from day one. I do not want to make decisions from a time commitment perspective, from a financial commitment perspective, in a place where I have to then compromise the choices that are available to me because I overextended myself financially or time based. I did not choose the right people. I did not choose the right things. Right. And so I'm really looking at this from a blank slate forward instead of having freedom of choice be that thing that I eventually have. And I'm saying in air quotes, as like the luxury to be able to think about because I've gotten the business to the point where I have enough money coming in and enough time and like support to have more freedom and flexibility with my time. A lot of times things go in the order that I opened up this episode with, where it's your very first focus is freedom of money, then your next focus is freedom of time. And then you start to get to the point where it's like, okay, now what else is there? Let me like start considering freedom of choice even though people don't always use those words, that tends to be the trajectory. Well, instead, I'm reverse engineering from the beginning. And I'm looking at if I know freedom of choice is ultimately what I want to get to. Because if you have freedom of choice, that means that you implicitly have freedom of time and money, right? So if I'm building it with that in mind and with that as almost the constraint I'm putting on myself, I'm giving myself the constraint to not have many constraints with that in mind, it's influencing how I'm thinking about building this and some of the decisions that I'm making and the pace at which I'm making investments because jewelry brands are really expensive anytime you're in the product space. And so it's just a really interesting concept and one that I thought might be really relevant to be thinking about depending on where you're at in your journey. So if you are already in your business, deep in it, going, right? How do you infuse more freedom of choice? And how do you remove some of the constraints or the restrictions that take some of those choices away? And if you are in a place of reinvention and reimagining and either building something new, like so many people I know are, whether it's a new offer within the business, a new business model within the business, or actually pivoting and launching something different or doing something different, right? How do you build in and build towards that freedom of choice from day one? Instead of it being the thing you aspire to get to one day, or you feel like you finally have the luxury to focus on after a whole lot of hard won lessons and expensive lessons, time and money wise, like how do you start there? And so that's what I would challenge you to think through and consider for yourself and your business. If you work with other clients and support them through this change, how do you help them think about this and how do you help them build business or an offer or even just the next level of their role in their business to have more freedom of choice from day one instead of it being the thing that they have to get to someday. Because I think ultimately that is where we can truly love our business and where we can make the kind of impact that we want to make. We can make the kind of profit that we want to make. And we could fully embrace and live our rich, fulfilled life, both in and out of our business when we have that freedom. Without it, it becomes much more draining and there's many more opportunities that we miss and just a whole lot more stress and overwhelm and frustration and things that take us out of what we truly love and pull us away from the incredible vision that we have for the business. So I hope this gives you some really great things to be thinking about as you're expanding your own freedom of choice in your business. And I'd love to hear from you. As always, head to my Substack. You can head to leanscaling.substack.com and share what comes up for you in the comments. I'd love to hear what you have to say and let's start a conversation. And as always, I will see you again next week. If you are a visionary founder ready to get yourself out of the day-to-day operations of your business and scale in a much more simple, sustainable way, I have just the thing. Register to join me for my Scale Simpler workshop at scalesimpler.com. In it, I break down the hidden barriers that keep you trapped in the day-to-day of your business and what to do to finally extract yourself once and for all so things do not keep coming back onto your plate. And if you're someone who partners with founders as their right-hand advisor, consultant, or fractional, I invite you to explore our scaling certification and licensing programs at strategicopsinstitute.com.